Harrison Ford destroys Joy Behar on The View, epic walkout after brutal showdown. Look who finally decided to leave the retirement home. Joy Behar drawled the second the red light flashed. Harrison Ford, grumpy pilot, grumpy archaeologist, grumpy. Whatever you are this week. A ripple of uneasy laughter fluttered through the studio. Ford's jaw set, but he managed a thin smile. He had walked onto The View, expecting 5 pleasant minutes about his new climate change thriller, not an ambush from a host nearly his own age. Whoopi Goldberg chimed in, eyes twinkling. Joy's just saying you've cornered the market on cranky heroes, Harry. Ford adjusted the cuffs of his charcoal jacket. Heroes age, he answered. So do talk show jokes. The audience oohed. Joy's grin widened. She smelled blood. Seriously, Harrison, any chance we'll see you play something not scowling into the distance? Maybe a cheerful barista. Ford folded his hands on the table. I came to discuss the film. Shall we? Whoopi flipped a blue card? We will. But viewers deserve the honest question. Are you challenging yourself or cashing nostalgia checks? Ford's publicist just off camera felt her stomach drop. They had begged producers to keep it friendly. Promises apparently meant little once ratings beckoned. Joy leaned forward, elbows sharp on glass. Come on, Han Solo, give us a fresh outline. Your last 3 roles. Same jacket, different hat. Ford's voice cooled. Joy, I've played presidents, doctors, villains. Variety isn't a jacket. Oh, right. Joy shot back the grumpy president and the grumpy doctor. A few nervous giggles died fast. Sonny Hostin and Sarah Haynes exchanged helpless glances. The fact strip beneath the desk scrolled promo stats for Ford's movie Pointless Filler under gathering storm clouds. Ford inhaled slow, practiced. Joy, do you plan to mention the film at all? I plan to mention whatever entertains our audience, she said. If they're bored, they switch to streaming. Then perhaps we share something interesting, Ford replied instead of recycling insults. Whoopi chuckled. Lighten up, Indy. We're having fun. Fun at whose expense? Ford asked. A hush fell. Stage lights buzzed like insects. Somewhere in the balcony, a phone chimed and was silenced. Joy tapped her pen against the mug. You know what I think. I think you're terrified the world's moved on. All those de-aging CGI tricks can't hide it. Maybe that's why you keep revisiting the old hits. Ford's eyes narrowed the steel that once froze bounty hunters and Nazis now fixed on a daytime comedian. Terrified? No. Tired, perhaps, of armchair critics who've never shown up on a cold set at 4 a.m. Joy shrugged. So, prove me wrong. Tell us about range. Ford opened his mouth, but Whoopi interjected. Wait before you do grumpiest role you ever played. Go! More laughter. Ford closed his mouth. The audience sensed the pivot from teasing to torment. They leaned in. I refuse the premise, Ford said. Joy clapped once loud. And there it is. Harrison Ford refuses the premise because the premise is true. Whoopi nodded theatrically. Guilty by silence. A low boo rolled from a back row directed at the host, not the guest. Joy ignored it. Ford straightened old pilot, preparing for turbulence. Joy, in my first job, I was paid $75 a week to sand studio doors. I worked. I waited tables. I kept showing up until someone believed I could do more. That's range. It's called a career. Joy's smile thinned. And yet here you are still sanding the same character. That's your reading, Ford said. Audiences differ. Whoopi raised her eyebrows. You mean nostalgia addicts with popcorn? Ford's patience cracked a hairline fracture. I mean people who love stories. Something this program could in theory respect. Silence again, thicker. Producers in the booth gestured, cut to commercial. Too late, the feed was gold for clicks. Joy folded her arms. Why so defensive, Harrison? We pay compliments when they're earned. Ford's reply came soft, lethal. Compliments from you would be suspect. The crowd reacted half gasp, half cheer. Joy's cheeks flushed crimson. She reached for another card, realized she didn't need it. Tell me, when was your last box office win without a franchise logo? Whoopi mimed, checking her watch. Tick-tock, Professor. Ford's eyes flashed. Joy is the goal to inform or to belittle. Sometimes they're the same. Joy said, voice sweet as citrus bite. Public deserves the truth you're coasting. Ford stood. Chair legs screeched. The room froze. Truth, he said. Truth is, I've spent 50 years, Whoopi cut in joking 50 years being grumpy. Laughter edged uneasy. Ford didn't smile, telling stories that outlived this broadcast. Joy's nostrils flared. And I've spent 25 making sure smug guests answer questions. Questions require curiosity, Ford answered. I see only cynicism. Joy opened her mouth, but the stage manager's frantic hand signals failed to penetrate the tension web. Ford continued, voice firm. You want numbers. My last film employed 200 crew members. Built sets from recycled steel, funded a scholarship. That matters. Mock the role, you mock their work. Whoopi shrugged. Big talk. From Mr. Franchise. Ford's focus shifted to her. Whoopi, I admire your Oscar. I doubt you earned it by interrupting. The room groaned, half shock, half admiration. Whoopi's smile vanished. Joy pushed back from the desk, standing now too. Two titans and a sidekick squared beneath hot lights. If you can't stand a little heat, I've flown through firestorms, Ford said. Heat doesn't scare me. Pettiness bores me. He turned toward the wings. Joy raised her voice. Walking already. That's the work ethic. Ford paused at stage edge. No, that's self-respect. And he walked off into off-camera darkness, leaving Joy, Whoopi, and a silent studio to reckon with the crater he'd carved. The cameras kept rolling, capturing Joy's frozen smile and Whoopi's stunned side glance. The red light stayed on. So did every viewer. Everyone knew Act 2 would not be kinder. Silence ruled the studio for 3 full seconds. Then the audience erupted some booing joy, others cheering Ford's exit, most just shouting into the chaos. The stage manager finally punched the commercial bumper. Screens faded to ads for cereal and arthritis gel. Back in the control room, producers yelled over each other. Do we dump the feed? Should we pull him back? Is PR on the line? Nobody knew. Viral lightning was already loose. Joy stood rigid palms flat on the desk. Whoopi leaned in, whisper hissed, nice job. You just turned morning fluff into Hiroshima. Joy's reply was a tremor. He started it. Sonny Hostin, eyes wide, muttered, we need a reset segment. Now. Harrison Ford, meanwhile, strode down the corridor, publicist jogging to keep up. Harrison, please, if we leave now, ABC will spin it as diva behavior. Ford didn't slow. Let them try. Crew members parted like pedestrians before a fire truck. He reached the freight elevator. Before the doors closed, a young camera assistant shoved a mic in. Mr. Ford. Any comment? Ford's expression softened. A notch kid looked barely 20. Here's a comment, he said quietly. Do your best, and don't let cheap shots become your brand. Doors slid shut. Commercials ended. Cameras returned to the desk. Joy inhaled, forced a smile. Well, folks, that was unexpected. Whoopi attempted levity. Han shot first. Scattered laughs. Most viewers felt the sting. Joy tried pivoting to a segment about holiday decor. Twitter had other plans. Ford. Flies Off trended within minutes, followed by Joy Behar bullies and Whoopi Pylon. Clips looped the scrapes of the chair. Ford's pettiness bores me. Joy smirk, freezing mid-retort. In ABC's top-floor conference room, executives watched a real-time sentiment dashboard hemorrhage red. One VP groaned, ad counsel will torch us. Legal asked, can we claim parody PR snapped not after that tone? On set, the teleprompter scrolled lines none of the hosts could read. Their focus kept drifting to phones vibrating under the desk. Producer Tom's voice filled their IFBs, wrapped the decor bit fast. Tease a Ford response after break. Joy whispered back, we don't have one. Tom. Then stall. They stumbled through faux enthusiasm about fur garlands. Viewers sensed the panic. Ratings spiked anyway. Controversy sells even when scripted banter fails. Ford sat in a black SUV outside the studio. His publicist held a tablet showing news aggregators. Headlines already spun. Legendary actor melts down on live TV. Daytime Dynasty disrespects Han Solo. Ford rubbed his temples. Find me a radio station. Classic jazz. She connected Bluetooth. Coltrane's sax filled the car, drowning pundit chatter. Inside, Whoopi checked her feed. Thousands of comments slammed her for backup cruelty. She muttered, I was playing sidekick. People act like I kicked their puppy. Joy heard and snapped, "You were a sidekick. Thanks for the assist." A brittle truce cracked. Sonny finally spoke on air. "Look, earlier things got heated. The View values tough questions, but also respect. We'll attempt to reconnect with Mr. Ford and continue the conversation another day." Joy forced another grin. "If he's not too busy sanding doors." The booth yelled, "Cut that." Too late, the jab aired. Twitter roared louder. At noon, Ford's agent drafted a statement. "Mr. Ford welcomes rigorous discussion, but will not tolerate disrespect. He wishes the program well." Lawyers flagged disrespect as subjective. Agent sent it anyway. Entertainment sites splashed it within minutes. By early afternoon, advertisers called ABC. A coffee brand paused its winter campaign. A car company demanded values alignment assurances. Executives ordered an internal review and a meeting with host contracts. Whispered phrase mandatory media training. Joy retreated to her dressing room. She replayed the confrontation on a phone screen. The moment she mocked his range, the flicker of real hurt, his final line. A knot formed behind her sternum, half anger, half something else. She texted a producer, "Do we apologize?" Typing dots appeared, vanished. No answer. Whoopi took a different route. Tweeted a gif of Indiana Jones outrunning a boulder, captioned "Mondays." Reactions split, half LOL, half read the room. That evening, every late-night show pre-wrote monologues. Some sided with the host's Ford's grumpiest role himself. Others championed the actor he shot first because they drew first. Cable panels booked culture critics to debate respect for elders, toxic talk show culture, and Hollywood arrogance. Next morning, ratings data landed. The View pulled its highest quarter hour in 5 years, but audience favorability fell 12 points. Joy skimmed the memo heart heavy. Whoopi shrugged. Even bad press prints money. Sonny countered until it invoices integrity. ABC announced Ford had been invited back at his convenience. His press team replied, "Mr. Ford's schedule is full." Privately, he told friends, "I'd rather crash a plane again." Social media kept chewing the carcass, but by day 3, a new scandal nudged it aside. Still, the clip lived on reaction compilations, meme remixes, think pieces titled, "When Talk Show Snark Became Too Much." Joy opened her laptop, stared at a blank joke document. For the first time in years, her mind offered no punchlines, only the echo of Ford's last words. Questions require curiosity. I see only cynicism. They circled her like gnats, around studio lights refusing to dim. Joy woke at 3 a.m. and could not fall back asleep. The numbers kept whirring: 12-point drop, 3 lost sponsors, 1 wounded legend. She padded to the kitchen, brewed decaf, scrolled comments she had sworn to ignore. Tell jokes, not jabs. Joy sounds jealous of everyone who ever built a thing. One user posted a split screenshot, Ford helping a lighting tech adjust a rig on a 1994 set, Joy rolling her eyes at an intern last year. The caption, "Two kinds of difficult." At noon, ABC gathered the host, legal PR, and a consultant with a soothing voice. He laid out a crisis grid on a whiteboard. Stage 1 outrage already peaked. Stage 2, reflection viewers decide who learned. Stage 3, redemption or remember why they left. Which arc we land on, he said, depends on tone in the next 48 hours. Whoopi crossed her arms. Tone police is here. Sonny wrote curiosity, cynicism in her notebook. Joy stared at the marker squeaking. The consultant recommended a town hall episode invite film students, industry veterans, even Ford if he declined, leave an empty chair. The gesture mattered. Producers loved the concept. Risk felt controlled. Joy hated it. Control felt foreign. That afternoon, Harrison Ford attended a tiny environmental luncheon in Santa Monica. Reporters ambushed. He offered a polite nod, then one sentence, "The planet burns. I won't add hot air." Cameras caught the line. Cable crawls flipped Ford stays above the fray. In New York, Joy drafted an email to Ford's agent. She wrote 3 openings. I'm sorry, we were both heated. Television distorts, deleted each. She finally typed, if you ever want to discuss the new film in a calmer setting, the invitation stands. Send. No apology, but a door not slammed. Ford's agent replied 4 hours later, Mr. Ford thanks you. Schedule remains full. No mention of sorry accepted or rejected. Just distance. The town hall show went ahead. The empty chair sat beside Joy, a leather sentinel under studio lights. A film school senior asked the first question, "Do panelists believe mockery is a valid path to truth?" Joy cleared her throat. She admitted comedy had lines, and she sometimes erased them in ink meant to be pencil. Applause gentle. Whoopi cracked a self-deprecating joke. "I've been erasing lines since VCRs." Laughter loosened tension. Ratings held steady. Social sentiment charted cautious optimism. A headline read, "The View learns to listen maybe," yet sleeplessness lingered. Joy booked a therapy session, her first in years. She told the therapist about craving laughs that taste like salt. The therapist asked when laughs started tasting bitter. Joy thought of her early stand-up gigs when jokes punched up at institutions not actors' wrinkles. She left with homework: write one set that attacks no person, only ideas. Meanwhile, Ford finished press for the movie. In London, a journalist asked about daytime talk shows. He said only, "I prefer film sets, fewer interruptions." But he slipped in a note of grace. Everyone gets grumpy. Question is, can we land the plane after? On Reddit, a user shared a clip of Joy's town hall humility next to Ford's London. Quote, thread title, "Maybe the plane is circling back." Upvotes climbed. ABC's consultant proposed a final step: invite Ford to record a pre-taped segment about the film with Joy introducing it. PR sent the request. Ford agreed on one condition: no studio, no banter, just him in a hangar beside a vintage plane he'd restored. ABC accepted. The taping day was cold, the hangar echoing. Ford discussed the film's themes, legacy, stewardship. At the end, he looked into camera. "Stories outlive us," he said. "Let's tell good ones." Joy watched the footage in a Manhattan edit bay. For the outro, she spoke alone. "Thank you, Harrison Ford, for reminding us that stories and interviews should build more than they break." She paused, then added the line the control room had not scripted. "And for the record, I can still learn." The segment aired. Fact check strip glowed green. Twitter verdict: unsensational, sincere. Advertisers resumed normal schedules. Viewer trust nudged upward another 3 points. Weeks later, Joy tried her homework set at a Brooklyn club. She riffed on subway delays, corporate jargon, and the national obsession with rage never naming a single celebrity. The biggest laugh came from, "This anger is like fast food, cheap everywhere, and it'll kill you if it's all you eat." After the show, she checked her phone. A new email from Ford's agent, Mr. Ford, appreciated the closing segment. He also enjoys jazz drop by the hangar if you're in LA. Joy smiled. She typed back one word: someday. She closed the phone, stepped into night air that smelled of wet pavement and possibility. Somewhere above, planes crossed the city, sky landing lights blinking, finding runways after turbulent routes. The following week, the story had cooled, at least in the media. But for Joy Behar, the fallout lingered like smoke after a fire. She had expected the whole thing to blow over quickly. After all, The View was known for its dramatic moments. But this one was different. It was personal. It had become more than just a celebrity spat. It had become a public reflection on who she was as a host, as a person. The feedback she received was split. Some of her die-hard fans cheered her on, claiming she had simply called Ford out on his aging Hollywood persona. Others, many others, felt that her treatment of him had crossed the line. Social media was awash with angry posts, memes, and heated debates, many of which called her behavior unprofessional. The Joy Behar bullies hashtag trended for a week. The producers noticed too. Ratings were holding steady, but the comments from viewers seemed to be a mixed bag. Some viewers had tuned in to witness the drama, but the overall sentiment was clear. People were uncomfortable. By the end of the week, Joy was summoned to ABC's corporate offices. The tone of the meeting was more serious than she had expected. The network's public relations team had conducted a thorough analysis of the situation, looking at not just the immediate fallout, but the long-term impact on The View's brand. What they found wasn't good news. The network had expected some level of controversy. After all, The View had made its name on bold opinions and confrontational moments. But what had happened with Ford was a different animal. It wasn't just a heated debate, it was a character assassination. The kind of thing that left a stain. "What happened, Joy?" the network executive asked her bluntly. "You went too far. And you made The View look like a circus." Joy clenched her fist, her jaw tightening. She had heard this all before about how her sharp tongue could alienate people, about how her humor wasn't for everyone. But this was the first time the network had expressed genuine concern. the first time they had questioned her value as a host. "I was just doing my job," she said, her voice low. "You weren't just doing your job," the executive snapped. "You attacked someone who has been in this business for over 50 years, someone with a legacy, and you did it on live TV, on our show." Joy exhaled sharply, trying to suppress the rising frustration in her chest. "You don't get it, do you? He's been coasting on the same roles for decades. Just because he's Harrison Ford doesn't mean he's immune from critique." The executive raised an eyebrow. "That's not the problem. The problem is how you did it, and how you made us look like bullies. We need to repair the brand. This isn't just about you. It's about all of us." Joy's head swam with the realization that her actions had put the View in jeopardy. She had been too caught up in her own ego, too convinced that her way of doing things was the only way. Now the show's reputation, and possibly her job, was on the line. "Do you want to stay with this show?" the executive asked bluntly. "Because if you do, you need to change your approach. We're willing to give you another chance, but you need to learn how to respect people even if you don't like them." Joy nodded stiffly, realizing that she was at a crossroads. She had been given a second chance, but how she handled it would determine her future. Meanwhile, Harrison Ford had gone on with his life. He continued promoting his movie, attending events, and doing press interviews, but behind the scenes he had been watching the fallout from the View incident with quiet interest. He hadn't been one to hold grudges, but the way Joy had treated him, mocking his career, his legacy, had stuck with him. He wasn't the kind of man to start a feud, but he also wasn't about to back down from someone who tried to tear him down publicly. Ford's publicist had warned him about the potential for backlash from fans of The View, but he hadn't expected the wave of support that came his way. Even critics who weren't particularly fond of him as an actor stood by his side, calling out Joy's behavior as unprofessional and unwarranted. It wasn't long before Ford's team started receiving offers for interviews and feature articles where he could publicly address the incident. The buzz surrounding The View was fading, but the lingering controversy still gave Ford a platform. He didn't care about fame he never had, but he understood the power of a narrative and he used it to his advantage. The network, meanwhile, had been trying to smooth things over with Ford. His publicist had been inundated with requests for an appearance on The View, but Ford wasn't interested in another round of public humiliation. He had made his point. However, the network wasn't done yet. The final attempt came in the form of an email from ABC's head of programming. "We'd like to extend an invitation for you to return to The View for a special appearance. The conversation has evolved and we want to have a respectful discussion about your career, your film, and what happened. Please let us know if you're willing to give it another chance." Ford read the email, shaking his head. He wasn't about to forgive or forget the way he had been treated, but there was something about the word respectful that piqued his curiosity. Maybe it was worth considering. He replied with a simple message, "Not this time, but thank you for reaching out." Back in New York, The View's producers were beginning to strategize for the future. The show was scheduled to air its holiday special, and they couldn't afford another controversy. They made some key changes, adjusting the tone of the show and inviting a more diverse group of guests. They also instituted a new policy: no guests would be ambushed. The producers knew the old formula wouldn't work anymore. The show needed to adapt. Joy felt the shift. The meetings were different now. The conversations were more about keeping things positive than sensational. And though it irritated her at first, she started to understand. The audience wanted something more than gossip. They wanted real, nuanced discussions, not just blood sport. The producers had been right all along. And so as 2023 drew to a close, Joy Behar found herself in a new position, caught between the old and new versions of herself. She had always prided herself on her sharp wit and biting commentary, but now she knew she had to find a balance, a way to keep her edge without crossing the line. The holiday special aired with a revamped format. The guests were invited to speak on their projects, but no one was subjected to ambush questions. The show was polite, almost too polite, but the audience responded positively. Ratings were solid, and the show had managed to regain some of the respect it had lost. As for Harrison Ford, he stayed out of the public eye, for the most part content with his legacy. He had faced down more than a few villains in his time, but the showdown with Joy Behar had been something else entirely. It had left a mark on both of them, but for very different reasons. In the end, The View had survived, but the cost had been high. For Joy, it had been a wake-up call, a reminder that sometimes in the pursuit of ratings and attention, you can lose something far more valuable: respect. A month had passed since the confrontation, and while things seemed to settle on the surface, the ripple effects continued to echo. Joy Behar, despite her outward confidence, was haunted by the memory of Harrison Ford's words, "You want to hurt someone because it makes you feel powerful." It wasn't just a jab at her. It was a mirror reflecting something she hadn't quite wanted to admit. The once unshakable host had felt the sting of doubt for the first time in years. She spent long hours rewatching the segment, picking apart every word, every moment of her behavior. Was she just defending herself? Or had she, as Ford suggested, turned cruelty into entertainment? The discomfort lingered like an itch she couldn't quite scratch. It was the first time in a long while that she couldn't tell herself it was just part of the show. Meanwhile, the broader media landscape was still reeling from the moment. The View had become the subject of heated debates everywhere, from late-night shows to online comment sections, from editorial columns to podcasts. Some saw Joy's actions as a necessary burst of candor in an increasingly sanitized media world. Others, including many who once considered themselves her loyal viewers, found her tactics offensive. The mix of praise and condemnation was as polarized as the country itself. For the first time in her career, Joy was uncertain of where she stood in the public eye. She'd always prided herself on being the voice of irreverence, someone who could push the limits without apology. But now, as the backlash continued to simmer, she questioned whether that same irreverence had led her to a dangerous edge. The tension in the studio was palpable when she returned to The View for the next week's shows. The producers had already briefed her about taking a softer tone. They weren't asking for an apology yet, but they had asked for a new direction. A focus on discussions that were challenging but respectful. This didn't sit well with Joy, but she knew what was at stake. The stakes had never been higher. "I'm sorry," Joy said to the producers during a meeting, her voice low, "but I'm not going to be forced into this new version of The View where we all sit around holding hands and talking about how much we love each other. That's not who we are." The head producer raised a hand. "It's not about love, Joy. It's about keeping the show relevant. We need to find a way to be real without being toxic. You've got to find a way to do that." Joy didn't reply right away. She felt the weight of their words, the undercurrent of expectation. And though she wanted to deflect it, push back, her shoulders slumped. This was bigger than her ego. If she didn't adjust, she risked the entire show's future. For the first time in weeks, she found herself approaching the stage differently. Her interactions with her co-host became more measured. There were no more biting remarks aimed at low-hanging fruit. She no longer leaned on sharp humor to mask discomfort. She wasn't completely transformed, old habits die hard, but she started to see the value in tempering her words. Still, the thought of Harrison Ford never truly left her mind. She had always been the one in control, the one with the last laugh. But that encounter, that sharp, uncomfortable moment, had taken something from her. Ford had shown her a vulnerability she hadn't known she could be exposed to. Meanwhile, Ford's career moved forward. He was booked for interviews, award shows, and even some low-key personal appearances. But it was clear he wasn't interested in revisiting the drama of The View. He'd taken the high road, leaving the confrontation behind him. His fans rallied around him not just for his acting, but for his dignity in the face of public attack. Many appreciated that he'd not allowed himself to be dragged into a media circus. Behind the scenes at ABC, however, the lessons from the Ford debacle were still reverberating. New internal guidelines were implemented not just for The View, but for all the network's talk shows. Humor that leaned too heavily on cruelty was now considered unacceptable. The idea was simple: keep it bold, keep it honest, but keep it respectful. Despite the adjustments, Joy wasn't entirely convinced. She sat in her dressing room one evening, staring at the list of potential guests for the next week. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to make a snarky comment in her notes for the team. But as her cursor blinked at the blank screen, she felt the weight of everything. Was it worth it? Was the quick laugh worth the cost? The next morning, as the cameras began rolling again, Joy sat in her chair gazing at the teleprompter. She had come to a decision. It was time to shift gears, not just for the sake of the show, but for her own integrity. As the segment began, the first guest was a climate activist, someone who could easily have been the target of a sharp quip. But as the guest spoke passionately about their cause, Joy held back, nodding along. She leaned forward, genuinely listening. When the activist finished, instead of a biting jab, Joy offered a genuine question, one that challenged the guest's point of view, but without disrespect. It was a small shift, but to her it felt like a victory. When the show wrapped for the day, the feedback from producers was unexpectedly positive. It wasn't perfect, but it was a step forward. And for the first time in weeks, Joy felt that maybe, just maybe, there was a way to balance her sharpness with the respect the audience had always expected of her. Later that night, Joy received an email from Ford's publicist, another offer for a sit-down. Ford had declined to appear on The View, but he had agreed to an exclusive one-on-one with an independent film outlet. The subject of the interview would be his recent career choices, but there was one stipulation: he would not discuss his confrontation with Joy.